Hey fellas, it's your boy Jordie Jordan, and yeah, big news today. Big news. Well, Capcom has officially got to the point where the company could be took over. If you're like me or anybody out there, I really love Capcom. I love Resident Evil. I love Mega Man. I've never really gotten a Devil May Cry, but Resident Evil Mega Man is good enough for me to love Capcom to death. I'm a real big fan of the Resident Evil series. It's actually probably my favorite game series out there, period. I loved Resident Evil 6, love Resident Evil 5, I loved 4, I love 3, 2, 1, love Operation Code Veronica. I don't think they have made a Resident Evil game I didn't like, but that was the Outbreak series and Survivor. I mean, I didn't like those too hot, but for the most part, Resident Evil in my book is fucking A-okay. And Mega Man was too. Mega Man was fun too. The very first game I ever kind of got was Mega Man 2. Other than, you know, Super Mario Duck Hunt. The first game I bought on my own was Mega Man 2. And yeah, luckily for me, it was a fucking fantastic game. But this was back in the golden age. But Capcom, they're at the point where their stock, the shares in their stock, can be bought up for less than $2.5 million. Well, what does this mean? Well, a company such as Microsoft or Sony could come by and buy complete shareholder, or like 51% of their actual stock, and gain access to the company and do a takeover that way. They don't have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for the rights of different organizations or things like that, such as Sony, such as like Mega Man, Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, Biohazard. They have a Capcom has a theme park that does that. For those of you who don't know, Capcom, like THQ, the toy headquarters, they've been under very big financial strain. They put a lot of money into Resident Evil 6 and it didn't do well. Then they tried to make some of that money up by kind of like porting over Revelations, and that didn't sell that well. A lot of people are just negative about Resident Evil to be negative about Resident Evil, because in my opinion, Resident Evil 6 is the best third-person shooter on the market. That's an opinion, but I would challenge people to show me another game that has a better cover system, a better movement, more fluid than Resident Evil 6. It might not be scary, but Resident Evil's never been scary. I mean, I can think of 2 instances in the entire series that I've ever jumped, and I bet you can name them. I asked my buddy Thomas the other day, could he name those 2 series, and he's like, yep. There's the dogs jumping through the windows in Resident Evil 1, and the hands reaching through the boards in Resident Evil 2. Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. So the atmosphere is what people are looking for in Resident Evil. They want that atmosphere, that run down town filled with zombies. You know, they want the little monster mutations. They want that atmosphere. They do. And a lot of people like, well, I like Leon's campaign. Leon's campaign sucked. That's my opinion. I love Resident Evil 6. It's by far my favorite Resident Evil. I've put tons and tons of time in it. I've platinumed it on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. And if I owned it on PC and I had somebody to play with, I'd platinum it on there too. I love the fucking game, dude. Fun game. But Capcom, opinion-wise, this kind of scares me. It kind of doesn't. One, I know I'm getting another Resident Evil game, regardless. I know Resident Evil 7 will happen if Capcom gets bought out. Because one of the fears I had was Capcom would sit there, hold on to this, hold on to this, hold on to this, stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up, and Resident Evil 7 be 5 years from now, because they were going to spend every dollar they had in the bank to pay and hope everything right on Resident Evil. Because Capcom has this mentality, they want to take Call of Duty fans away from Call of Duty and have them play Resident Evil, and it just doesn't work that way. It's kind of like Dead Space. Electronic Arts set up Dead Space 3, hell, that stupid Awakening DLC. They set it up so that after, you know, Dead Space 3, they had room for Dead Space 4 to be, you know, hell on earth, you know, the whole 9 there. And then Visceral Games, well, Dead Space 4 is not happening. Dead Space only sold 3 million copies. Seriously, dude? Like, Dead Space had to have made money. Dead Space 3 had to have made money. They reused environments. They pretty much used the same system that Dead Space 2 did, engine-wise. All they had to do was really make 3 acts and then do some voice acting. I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than that. But I don't see the money being like a graveyard where all $100 bills go to die. Dead Space 3 was a fun game. at a great atmosphere. It was very fun. If there was DLC that came out right now, I would buy Dead Space DLC. I got that shit platinum on 2 consoles as well. I love third-person co-ops. But Dead Space 4, it's out in the blue yonder. Will we ever see a Dead Space 4? I have no clue. Maybe one day. It ain't gonna be anytime soon because Dead Space 3 only sold 3 million copies. Come on, EA. Sometimes you got to make games for the fans. You have to, dude. You have to make games for the fans. Like, don't expect every game to be a treasure trove. Just keep the wheels turning, dude. The franchise, the T-shirts, the items, the action figures, the rights, all that's worth money too. I don't think a lot of people look at that. That's worth money. Like Capcom, if they were going to sell their company without this loophole through the stockhold shares, that's going to get them. I hope they patch it up so we don't have to see this. I'd say Capcom's worth half $1 billion. I do. Just the Mega Man and Resident Evil franchises alone, to get those games, Devil May Cry, you know, to get those games and have a company want to come in and buy the rights to them. I'm sure there's $500 million there. And Dead Space is the same way. I'm sure some company would pay you a lot of money for the Dead Space rights because there's a lot of potential still in that series. I love the series of Dead Space. I love Isaac Clarke. I love Carver, or John Carver. Love it to death. And like I'm getting back to him, getting sidetracked here. But to say it, like I'm kind of excited that if Microsoft or Sony picks it up, I'm worried about it becoming exclusive. A lot of people are jumping on like Nintendo, buy them Nintendo. And like, I don't want that to happen because I don't want to go buy a Nintendo console. This happened to me before. I bought a GameCube way back in the day because the Resident Evil remake and Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 4, all those came out on the GameCube. So I bought a GameCube, which I don't know where the fuck it's at now, but I still have the games to it. I only own 3 games on it. I own Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 0, and the Resident Evil remake. And that was it. That's all the games I owned on it. And I don't want to have to do the same thing with like go get a Wii U to play Resident Evil because I love the series. I want a third-party developer company to do this if Capcom doesn't do it itself. I want the Resident Evil games to come out on all platforms. If Microsoft buys it, Resident Evil is going to be an Xbox One exclusive, which isn't the end of the world. I have an Xbox One. But it's the same. But it's the same deal. If Sony was to pick it up, it'd be a PlayStation 4 exclusive. They wouldn't go cross-platform with this kind of stuff. Which I guess that wouldn't be a bad idea. Just imagine Naughty Dog doing Resident Evil 7. That would kick fucking ass. I'd wait 3 years for that. I bet they do a wonderful job on it. Or maybe even Bethesda. Maybe Bethesda goes out and grabs it. I don't know. Maybe a company like that, a publisher. But do we really want our Electronic Arts Resident Evil? I don't know. Big 3, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, or maybe even like a development company. Just a company that just buys up studios like Electronic Arts or Bethesda or these other companies. They could do it as well because that's what pretty much Capcom is. But at the same time, I think of like what kind of horrible job or what would they turn these series into, and then I think about Fallout. Fallout was a great game. It was made by a great studio that had a lot of heart and put a lot of love into their games. I'm talking about Black Isle here, and Interplay. And when I see Bethesda bought the Fallout rights, I didn't know what they were going to do with it. But in my opinion, they took a great game like Fallout, which had a fantastic engine. It wouldn't work in today's standards, but back in the day in the late 90s, yeah, that was fucking fun. It was a fucking fun game. Fallout 1 and 2, great games. But Fallout 3 revolutionized it. Fallout 3 made it like, wow, this is the greatest shit ever. To this day, I play Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. And like, they're the most enjoyable experiences I have in gaming. I could sit down right now and play Fallout 3 and it would just be like the first time I ever played it. I know where everything is in the game, but just the enjoyment, the experience, the way you can role play, everything. And if you want to go really the deep modding community of Fallout, maybe that will happen with Resident Evil. But I don't know. Bethesda's dropped a lot of fucking balls now. Bethesda brought us Brink. And Brink was a pile of dog shit. I'm talking about a steaming pile of peanut poop. And I worry about that as well. Like, man, with Resident Evil 7, because whoever buys it, they're going to listen to the fans and they're going to try to take it back to the horror roots. And I don't think that's the way the Resident Evil series should go. A lot of people are going to castrate me for that, saying that Resident Evil is supposed to be scary and scary atmosphere. I think the best way you play Resident Evil is you create a better atmosphere and you create a series that's based around co-op. And when you add co-op to any game, it's not going to be as terrifying or scary as it originally was, because isolation is the actual fear there. And you know, there's a cool game coming out called Alien Isolation, and I'd be interested in that too. But I don't think that's the way. I think Resident Evil 5 did it the best with the co-op system. I think 5, where you had to share ammo, you had to share health items, you could buy stuff. I think 5 system worked great, but 5 had this dog shit environment. Like I hated 5's campaign. It's set mainly in Africa, and it doesn't really feel Resident Evil like. And by the time you get to the laboratories, you're kind of burned out on it, and it's like, ugh. Then you got that stupid boss fights. They have some of the hardest boss fights in the entire series, and yeah, that's what it is there. But like if you took like Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 and like kind of mixed them together, and you created a game that was set mainly at night and, you know, in situations, and you had to like kind of conserve ammo, and you and your co-op buddy couldn't have 2 shotguns. You had to kind of like, all right, well, you got to rock the shotgun, Thomas. I'm gonna rock this pistol, and we'll just kind of, you get the shotgun ammo, I'll get the pistol ammo, and we'll work what situation we got to work with. And teamwork, motivate, have each other feed off each other. They're not just, you know, puzzles that 2 people have to stand on stuff for. And that right there is an enjoyable experience. I don't know what to take if Capcom goes under. I don't want to see them go under. They're a great company and they care about their fans. Well, I say that, but they haven't made a Mega Man game in fucking forever. In my opinion, they're a company that cares about the games they make still, and I think that's a rarity. Yeah, Capcom right now is in trouble. They could be bought out by somebody else. I figured I'd let you guys know and see what you guys thought about it. It's your boy Wings of Redemption. I'm Audi 5000. Peace, pimps.